So Russ, you came from a coal-bearing town. That's where you were born with your mom and dad, and came to Jamestown. So coal was very much part of your world. Was there any sense that would at some point be one of the principal villains in the whole Earth Day thing?
It was, you could, through study, you could find that out. And some conversation with my father and listening to my father and his brothers and them talk about the coal mine, especially the soft coal industry. That was a very smoky result. The anthracite, the hard soft coal, was not quite so bad. And there was a lot of that in Jamestown. And I remember my father seeing as the mayor talked about the light plant, seeing the smoke coming out of the light plant, and as he mentioned about the smoke that affected your home. I remember the problems on the north side of Jamestown. The snow was much darker than it was on the west side of Jamestown as a kid, and that kind of thing. You would hear those kind of conversations. And the women, the mayor mentioned about putting out their laundry, they couldn't do that, and the kids would be out playing on the porch or playing in the lawn, and their clothes would get a little darker than they would normally. And people claimed that was a result of some of the smoke and pollution in the air. And I think that's why the mayor didn't. The city of Jamestown, prior to that, and prior to my knowledge, in fact, it ended up being part of the Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Department. They had the Chautauqua River Commission, and they had a smoke abatement committee, I believe, also. So the people were aware of that, and they were watching it, and they were studying it, and trying to find ways to make the environment better at that time. And part of that was at the gold mining industry.
Boy, one of my memories, as this is all coming up here, is going down to the Endress ice place, and they had an ice rink there behind the high school, and how you would skate, but you always had kind of stuff, black stuff you were working on. It wasn't like going to Allen Park at all. It was...
No, it was all a result of that industrial corridor. But in the time of our history, in that time development, that industrial corridor was extremely, extremely important to the quality of life, not only in Jamestown, but into the country and to the world. So a lot of those things, and that was true all over. I remember my father, when the coal mines were slow, he worked in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, in the steel mills. And he said there would be times when it would be a bright sun someplace else, but there was never sunshine in Latrobe. And all of those kind of things, I can hear those conversations. But Jamestown was attuned to that, as we talked about the River Commission, the Smoke Abatement Committee. I'm talking about cleaning up. I can remember there was a gentleman who was an employee of the DPW, the division of the city of Jamestown, and he walked mostly through downtown Jamestown, I think every day. He had a big barrel with wheels on it, and he had a shovel, and he had a broom, and he cleaned up the curb lines, he cleaned up the sidewalk, he picked up everything along the line, and almost on a daily basis going through the downtown, the Jamestown area. And so the city was addressed to that, and we're paying attention to it, making a nice quality of life for the community. As the mayor mentioned, Jamestown had by acreage one of the largest park systems in New York State for many years, and still it's almost in the leading category. And they had a good tree program, a wonderful city forest, a great tree canopy in Jamestown. We look at the beauty of West 3rd Street with those trees, but every other street in town just had beautiful canopies of trees. And the city paid attention to that, and it was a cost from the taxpayer to create and to maintain that. And there was very little, there was more than some, but very little spraying going on in the Parks Department, on the ball fields and on the athletic fields and the playgrounds for grass control, for weed control. And a few special places and a few on some of the baseball fields, a little bit down at Municipal Stadium. But generally, they just didn't blanket the city with spray to control the dandelions and all the most beautiful flower in the world, the dandelion, and all of those things. So the Jamestown was attuned to that. And of course, with the Tree City program, the rest of the area began to recognize what Jamestown was all about in its tree program and all of the other activities. And then one of the biggest things I remember, I can't put years to it, but when they come out with the recycling program and the deposit program on bottles, I worked close with people in Allegheny State Park, and they said that changed their operation down there drastically because they didn't have to have crews of people going out every time, sometimes more than once a day, picking up bottles and picking up cans along the parkway. I mean, that happened in Jamestown. We had barrels all over in the parks for barrels, for cans and trash and stuff thrown away, and suddenly those things just kind of begin to disappear. And I always thought over later years, and even today, I remember being at Fort Dix, running around, being a non-smoker, and have to pick up cigarette butts from the smokers. And most of them were what they could strip them because there was no filters on them. You'd have to pick them up and strip them, but during that time, the filter cigarette come out, so the tobacco disappeared, but the filters were laying all over. And that was the same thing in town for years, and even today, if you take a walk down the street. It's too bad they don't put a deposit value on those there filters on the cigarettes. And if they were 3 cents or 5 cents, there wouldn't be many of them laying on the sidewalk anymore. But it's those kind of things that happen that begin to make a big difference. And with the Earth Day program, I could feel then and feel now even how important it was to Jamestown, whether it started on the pile of that dirt there on Cherry Street or whether it started in other mines in other parts of the country. It was so important to Jamestown, but you got people talking about it. The Kiwanis Club got interested in it. All the service clubs got interested in it. It was a conversation in schools. It was a conversation in playgrounds, and people began to look and wonder what they were doing, what they were throwing. And I remember we had a ragweed eradication program, and we used the school kids would go around town and pull the ragweeds out because they were just very uncomfortable to the air and the quality of air. And that went on for several years, and that was one of the things that spun off Earth Day and many of the other activities. It got the schools involved. I remember a man today with a youngster by name was John Bauer, who was a student at the Jamestown Community College, was very, very interested in it. And he helped, the college provided a truck, and John was a driver of the truck going around Jamestown on a couple of different occasions for us when we started the downtown cleanup program. The mayor can remember we used to sweep the alleys and sweep down street, and would gather all that stuff and all haul it over to the landfill. And so all of those kind of things began to happen, and that generation sort of set a foundation for future generations to have some of the same concerns and some of the same development. So all of those things have really been an improvement. Years ago, Jamestown's landfill, the landfill that we have now in the county in Ellery, was down on just off Washington Street. And all of the trash was picked up, the garbage was picked up, was taken and dumped down at the landfill, and not really covered, so many times it caught fire, and many times it was set on fire to eradicate it, get rid of it. And so that was a problem that was resolved after that. Then they began not to burn it, but to cover it. Jamestown used to have a brush dump, and the trees that would come down in storm for other reasons, maturity reasons or others, would be cut down, and they were taken out on Jones and Gifford Avenue at the city line there at the Celeron. And the Parks Department would drop it off there and would cut it up. And some of the wood people would pick up and use for firewood, but most of it would lay there, and once in a while that would get put on fire. And we got permission from the state to bury it out there, but you had to be careful because it was all wetlands, and there was a great restriction on that. So people's eyes were open to it, and people's minds were open to the problem, and everybody looking for a positive way to help make a difference. And Earth Day, I think, was one of the strongest foundations to build many of the programs we enjoy today.
There was the initial inaugural event in Jamestown. You're pictured very prominently in this picture with Mayor Lundeen reading a proclamation among other people in attendance. Do you recall much about that day or that time period in 1970? This would have been April of 1970?
I remember being there. I remember the mayor's encouragement that I be there, and the Parks and Recreation and the Department of Public Works be supportive and take an interest in the program. And I was overwhelmed to see that much piled on the street that was gathered in our community. And one of the thoughts was, am I going to have to pick that up after this is over? But the crews in the city responded very well. One of the things from my experience in government, with the elected official, with the administration and the appointed people and the hired people on the staff, year after year after year, and they continue to work together so well. And that's one of the reasons we enjoy what we enjoy today. One of my early environmental things I can remember in our family was we used to, on Sundays, it was great on a summer day to take a ride around the lake with my mother and my dad and my sister. And my dad would stop and get ice cream or something for us. And I remember, I think we were going out along up by Flavanna, and I rolled the window down and threw the wrapper out of the car window from the ice cream cone. And we didn't go very far, and the car stopped. And my dad says, "What did you do?" "What? What do you mean, what I do?" He said, "What'd you throw out the window?" "Oh," I said, "Oh, the paper off the ice cream cone." "Come on." He stopped the car. I had to get out. Took me out to go get it. And then he said, "Well, come on, let's just go." So we walked another, seemed like 25 miles, picking up things along the road and putting them back in there. And he says, you don't do that. And my mother says, when you bring it with you, you take it home with you. So that was one of my early environmental lessons. And I do feel, I just hope there's a continued education, a continual talking about the environment, a continued talking about the appreciation of the trees, appreciating of the flowers and the grasses and all the wonderful things we have. Let's just not take them for granted. It could be a possibility that some generation may wake up a day, well, there'll not be a tree in Jamestown. There may not be grass in Jamestown. There may not be air that you can't breathe only unless you breathe it through a mask. And we've been able to do that, so let's protect that. And the thing that always spins in my mind when I look at a tree, I look at the leaves, I look at the grass on all the athletic fields, I look at the flowers, I realize that tree there, it was a development from a single first seed. Where did that seed come from that put that tree there? Where did that seed come from that put that blade of grass in Bergman Park or at the stadium? Where's that seed come from that put the first dandelion that grows in my backyard? And have a respect and an understanding for that and appreciation. And just hope that cycle does not end.